Today I'm going to show you how to make this super easy chunky blanket, perfect for fall and winter time. It's super easy to adapt, so if you don't like the little holes in it, you can just skip that part. It's a very simple and adaptable pattern. I use a rather large hook with this, which means it's very loose stitches, so it's super flowy, squishy. That might not be the feel that you're necessarily going for, so feel free to use a smaller hook if you would like. So here is the hook that I will be using. I'm not 100% sure what size it is, but in case this helps for a point of reference, here is it next to a ruler, so hopefully that helps you. I also actually used the cheapest yarn that I could find, which is Mainstay's 100% acrylic yarn, the gray color. It's surprisingly soft, especially after you use some fabric softener on it. It's the larger skein with 798 yards, and it's a weight 4 yarn. We will be using 3 strands at a time though, so you could use your favorite chunky weight yarn as well. You will need at least 2 of these skeins, which is what I used, or you could do 3 or 4 for a really nice size chunky blanket for around $20. So to start off this blanket, you have 2 options. The first option is the traditional method of making a foundation row of chains, doing as many chains as you want until you reach the length that you want your blanket to be, and afterwards doing a double crochet into each one of those chains. Your second option is actually the chainless double crochet foundation method, and I have a video on how to do that linked in the description. I lost a little bit of footage here, so I will not be showing you how to do that method in this video. So choose either the chaining method or the chainless foundation method and begin your blanket, get the length that you want, and we will start on the next step. So as you can see, I have done the chainless foundation method, and I have done 11 stitches, an uneven number. So if you did the chaining method, you would have chained an uneven number of stitches plus 2, skipped the first 2 stitches, and done double crochets in all of the rest of the stitches, and that's the point where we are starting at. So once you have your first row completed, the next row is essentially the same thing. You're going to chain 3. You could chain 2 if that's how you prefer to do it. I chain 3 because I have a tighter tension on my chains. But you're not going to work into that first stitch because your chain 3 is going to actually count as a stitch in this pattern. The chain 3s count. So skip that first stitch and do a double crochet into the following stitch in the back loop only. So do this whole row, a row of double crochets in the back loop only. So once you finish that, the next row is essentially the same. You're going to do 4 rows that are just like this. So you've done 2. Now you're going to chain 3, just like you did before. Then turn your work. And once again, do a row of double crochets in the back loop only. Remembering to skip that first stitch because your chain 3 counts. Once you reach the end of the row, every time you reach the end of a row, make sure that you have the same number of stitches as you started with. It's really easy to accidentally add a stitch or drop a stitch, especially dropping a stitch at the end of the row is really common, so please count. Don't forget that last stitch. I know it's a lot easier for me because I only have 11, but do it. It's worth it. It'll save you a lot of trouble if you end up having to unravel it because you have a weird triangle blanket. So now that you have 4 rows, the next one is going to be that row of kind of holes. So you're going to chain 3 and then chain 1 more. So that chain 3 is going to be a double crochet, and then that last chain is just a chain. So we've chained 1, and then we're going to skip 1. So you're going to be working into that 3rd stitch from the end. So do a double crochet into that 3rd stitch from the end. And it doesn't have to be back loop only on these ones. So chain 1, skip 1, and do another double crochet in the next stitch. So chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in the next stitch, then chain 1, skip 1, then double crochet into the next stitch, and keep going until you reach the end of your row. And if you end up not being able to chain one, skip one, and then get to the last stitch in your row, then you either are just a little confused about where you need to do your last stitch, or you counted wrong and you did not do an uneven number of stitches in the beginning. Okay, and that's what it should look like. Now you could either just do one row like this and go back to doing double crochets, but in my version I did have 2 rows like this, so we're going to do another row. It'll be exactly the same. We'll just chain 3 for that first double crochet, and then chain 1 during your work, skip 1, so that one doesn't count because the chain counts as a stitch already. So skip 1. It's easy to tell which ones to skip in this row because you've already skipped it, so you're skipping that chain 1 space from the row before. So chain 1, skip the chain 1 space, double crochet into the double crochet of the previous row. Super simple, basically what you just did. So when you get to the end of this row, it can be a little confusing as far as where you're supposed to do the last double crochet. Just make sure you do it in the 3rd chain from the bottom, so you still have that chain 1 space. And there you go. So those are the 6 rows that I will have you repeat for the entire blanket. You can do any variation of this. You could do only 3 rows of double crochets if you want, or 2, or you could do more depending on how often you want these little holes to show up in your blanket. For this pattern, I would recommend that you not end on those 2 rows. I would say to end in 4 more rows of double crochets. So in order to do a double crochet in the top of this, let me just show you that real quick. You're going to chain 3 just like you do whenever you're starting a row of double crochets. You're going to do a double crochet into that chain 1 space, and you're back to doing back loop only, so pay attention to that part. Sorry, 3 strands is tricky. So double crochet into the back loop only of that double crochet, then next you'll work into the chain 1 space, back loop only, and just so on and so forth. Pretty straightforward. So of course mine looks a little bit silly because it's not nearly as long as your blanket is going to be, but there you have it, your easy chunky blanket. It works up pretty fast and you have a lot of options to make it your own. So for the finished product, you could just leave it as it is, or you could do tassels here at the end. That's kind of what I plan to do with mine. I think that would look really good. Or you could just do a simple border of single crochets, and if you do that, you could just do 1 in each stitch at the top, and then around the side do 2 single crochets per row, and that would end up perfect. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy your chunky blanket. I will catch you in the next one.